Well, good morning, guys. It's good to be with you guys once again uh, through this method, and it's worked, and it allows me to stay in touch with you guys, and still miss being with y'all, but until then, we'll just continue on like this. But a real good lesson today, very instructional, very point on. Solomon does a great job, and he lays it all out there. A lot of good instructions, and so we'll discuss this in a minute. The lesson today is compassion demonstrated, and sometimes that may be a hard characteristic for us to show, but it's all broken down here, and the rewards of being that kind of a person as opposed to not being that kind of a person, and the results and the consequences of each one of them. But it's a very interesting lesson, very informative, and it'll be very helpful, I feel like, and encouraging to you guys. But we'll go ahead and have a word of prayer, then we'll get started. Okay, guys? Thank you, Father, for all your many blessings. Thank you for this day. Thank you for the beautiful weather. Thank you for our class. And I thank you for each man represented, Father, and I pray that your richest blessings on them and their families, Father. And I hope that everybody is well and be encouraged, Father, by this lesson today and your word. And that if there's any sickness or difficulty, Father, I pray that you'll minister to their needs, encourage them, lift them up, Father, help them to look to you and not the world. Father, just pray for our church family, our elderly, and those that are going through difficult times, sickness or difficulties or bereavement, having lost loved ones, that you'll minister to their needs. And Father, I pray that you'll be with our country and the leadership, that they'll make decisions that they'll be in accordance to your will, Father. And just thank you for all the many ways you bless us and the things that we just take for granted, Father, that you just take care of us. And I just thank you so much for that. Give us a good day in your word and the truth in your word. And just be with us, like I said, and just minister to those people that are hurting, and all the healthcare workers, Father, that are just going through all of this situation the last several months, and that you just help us to, like your word says, use our God-given wisdom and discernment and decisions that we make, Father. And forgive us of our sins and shortcomings. In your name I pray. Amen. Okay, guys, the lesson today, like I said, is compassion demonstrated. And we're in the book of Proverbs, and it's chapter 3, verses 21 to 35. I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then we'll discuss it. Verse 21, maintain sound wisdom and discretion. My son, don't lose sight of them. They will be life for you and adornment for your neck. Then you will go safely on your way. Your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. You will lie down and your sleep will be pleasant. Don't fear sudden danger or the ruin of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from a snare. Okay, verse 27. When it is in your power, don't withhold good from the one to whom it belongs. Don't say to your neighbor, go away, come back later. I'll give it tomorrow when it is there with you. Don't plan any harm against your neighbor, for he trusts you and lives near you. Don't accuse anyone without a cause when he has done you no harm. Verse 31. Don't envy a violent man or choose any of his ways, for the devious are detestable to the Lord, but he is a friend to the upright. The Lord's curse is on the household of the wicked, but he blesses the home of the righteous. He mocks those who mock, but gives grace to the humble. The wise will inherit honor, but he holds up fools to dishonor. Pretty interesting, huh, fellas, that, the things that were said here. And if you do it God's way, you'll have these consequences. But if you do it your way, you'll also have consequences. And it's pretty plain and simple to understand and all. But it says following God's wisdom is demonstrated how a person treats others. and how we treat, and this applies to all of us, how we treat each other, how we treat other people. Are we doing it in a God-like way? Are we showing God, Christ in the way we treat other people? Are we, it shows, our spiritual maturity, how we do treat others, doesn't it? I mean, you can't hide it, how you treat people, how you act, how your compassion and all those attributes really come out, don't they? When you're talking about how you treat other people. But, loving people is not always the easy road, is it? I mean, it's difficult at times, especially in this day and time. We have such a diverse, wide variety of situations and people and all. We need some discernment. We need some guidance and direction, don't we? And the instruction book, as we all know, is the Bible, and it has all the guidelines, all the directions, all the instructions on how we are to do, live our life. And one of those ways is, one of those things is how we treat other people. We need biblical wisdom, don't we? To know how to relate and treat other people, and especially those, now we're not going to agree, that, we all know that we're not going to agree with everybody in the things they say, but, to be able to be discerning, we need to have biblical wisdom, to know how to relate to those people that we disagree with, maybe don't like, or what have you, and we should never let that, determine how we act. We should be consistent and all, kill them with kindness. I guess, y'all heard that. And of course, we've talked about this many times. And the Lord, in His Word, Solomon brings this out too, that, get yourself out of the way. Humble yourself. Those things that will allow you to treat others with God-like wisdom, so, and as far as, these beggars that we see along life's way in different places, businesses, we just have to use godly wisdom, don't we? And discernment and your discretion. That's up to each individual. I'm not telling you, what to do or not to do in that situation, but you just use your own God-given wisdom and you make your decisions. And, in those situations, we're all confronted with those. Now, some are just pretty much, there's a no-brainer type thing, and so we need to be smart. We need to use that wisdom. But wisdom, it's a characteristic of the life of the believer, isn't it? Godly wisdom, but also produces joy, and that wisdom comes from, that wisdom that comes from God is more important than our personal opinions or preferences, and joy is the outcome of the person who values and seeks godly wisdom. And in the end, wisdom comes, that comes from God, produces the life that it enables us to have a clear conscience, to go to bed at night, not tossing and turning, not being able to sleep. It gives you that peace that passeth all understanding. But in verses 21 to 26, it talks about confidence gained. And so it says Solomon, the person who trusts, he says that the person that trusts in God will find rest from fear. He'll be able to embrace wise decisions and humble discretions. There's that word that we've used a lot, and it's in the Bible a lot, isn't it? And that humble discretion, and it said, Solomon was saying that, and he was, throughout the lesson, he continues to talk about his son. He was worried about his son. He wanted his son to have develop godly wisdom. And he was always concerned about him. And he says, in order for his son to be able to benefit from the treasures of wisdom and discretion, he would need to never let out of his sight. He would never let those attributes out of his sight. Always be mindful of them in the decisions that he had to make. That is the positive life. He says, my son, don't lose sight of them, because they will be life for you and for you and I as well. our wisdom, our godly wisdom, and our discretion, is those things, and we can do those things, as like it said in Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, keep our eyes on Jesus. Don't keep it on the world, but keep our eyes on Jesus to make that decision that would be pleasing in his eyes. And of course it says here in Proverbs 3, we're to keep our eyes fastened on God's wisdom. Not our own, God's wisdom, not the world's, not, whoever or whatever, what we may see on television or on Facebook or whatever. Godly wisdom. And that's the key, fellas, Godly wisdom, it helps us to avoid those traps that are become along the way, that lead to danger and ruin. And there will be traps, right? I mean, we're not exempt, no matter what age we are. The devil is still in business, and he's not going to ever give up, especially for those people that are close to the Lord. And using that godly wisdom, he has his choices for us too. But are we going to be strong enough? We will be strong enough to avoid those traps that are going to be on the way, the forks in the road, and the situations we may be put in. Use your God-given wisdom, fellas, and you'll never go wrong. And it says the confidence that we need to live out a wise and God-centered life. It doesn't mean we're supposed to avoid, avoid those that that we fear, those people that we fear, situations, and especially those who oppose God. We're not going to go get in a closet somewhere. We're, to still face those head on, it says true confidence comes from knowing and loving God. For the Lord will be your for the Lord will be your confidence. God is with us, and it's his presence that produces our confidence. Our confidence comes from the awareness that nothing matters more than God's presence in our life. And that's that relationship, fellas, that we have with the Lord. It gives us that self-confidence to be able to make those decisions and not sit there and dwell on it, think about it, what will greatly benefit us in the end, it's God's wisdom, God's discernment, his decision, our decisions based on his wisdom through us, So, we have to be mindful of that now to give us that confidence to be able to make decisions that will be, godly decisions, and that's because of that godly wisdom. Verses 27 to 30 talks about kindness expressed. Now, there's ways that we show that we're following God's wisdom. The way we do things as far as treating other people, and of course, that is one of the evidence of how that we're following God's wisdom, how we do treat other people. And Solomon gives 4 examples of that. He expects his people to treat others with fairness and compassion. And we always need to be mindful of that, how we treat other people. First, it says, when it is in your power, don't withhold good from one to whom it belongs. If somebody's working for you, doing something for you, pay them right up front. Don't just put them off and don't, tell them, just blow them off, pay them what they deserve right then. And another one that says, don't say to your neighbor, go away, come back later, I'll give it tomorrow. No, don't put people off. Don't, Solomon says he directed his son to act immediately without excuse. We make excuses a lot of times, don't we? That's not God's way to do things, fellas, to make excuses, put people off. It's just treat them like, I guess, we've heard before, like you want to be treated. It's not a different set of circumstances just because, it's not you. A third example is don't plan any harm against your neighbor. Don't do anything or say anything that would bring harm to your neighbor. Your neighbors trust you and they live close to you, right? Some may not. You may be isolated, but still, you come in contact with friends and stuff and all, you develop trust between you and friends or neighbors if you live in a neighborhood. But, through our godly behavior, we have hopefully built a level of trust. And And that's what God expects us to do. And the fourth demonstration of compassion is found in verse 30. Don't accuse anyone without cause when he has done you no harm. Don't put people in a position. Don't blame them, and they have point your fingers at them for doing this or when they really didn't do anything. They didn't do. Don't trash people. Don't get on social media and trash people. And that's being done. And any of you that have that access, Facebook or what have you, neighborhood page, get on there and say the most hateful things about people. Well, that's not right. That's not God-like. And that's reflecting back on whoever it is that did that. We don't want to be put in that position, do we, fellas, to where it looks like, you say something, you got to be careful. Your words mean a lot. And they can really lift people up or tear people down. So we need to really be careful what we say, and if it's something that's questionable, just don't say it at all. Because words can hurt, can't they? And they have hurt. And they'll continue. So we got to be careful. But the last verses 31 and 35 are called blessing secured. Nothing is more rewarding than being faithful to God. Even when people don't even understand where we're coming from, when we're humble, and if we don't expect anything in return, you just do it because it's the right thing. It's the God way to do things. And we're doing it for God. We're not doing it for man. We're not doing it to get paid or a pat on the back. You just, it's like in the church. You do these things, you're not for accolades or not for a good job or money or what have you. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. It's the God thing to do. And you'll be confident. You'll be rewarded. It earns, like we've talked about before. You try to be a blessing to somebody else, turns around and it kicks back and it ends up blessing you. And I've had that. I know we've all done that. So whatever you do, listen, God, He sees it. He understands. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. And your life and your wisdom, your godly wisdom is in the right place. Your heart's in the right place, is what it amounts to, because, it starts there. But then people can see this in you, and they respect that, and God honors that. But he also talked to his son Solomon, talked to his son about the temptation of taking the path of a violent man. So, the violent man in Solomon's day, he was nothing more than a criminal. And but wise people choose to ignore the example of the violent man. Nothing compares to being on friendly terms with God. The gain of all possessions and fair weather friends is no comparison to God's presence and counsel in our lives. Solomon used 3 separate and distinct comparisons between the wise and the unwise, the righteous and the unrighteous. God pronounced a curse on the household of the wicked. And of course, this curse is very serious when it's God doing it. It involves the removal of God's presence. And the pronouncement of the curse was a dreadful thing, but who made the curse? The Lord made the curse. It wasn't some other guy. It was the Lord. As God's people, we're called to love both friend and enemy. And judgment and divine wrath are God's and His alone. This is a point where somebody does you wrong. You want to take vengeance. You want to get revenge right away, but it doesn't go very well, does it? God, in the Bible, God says, He warns believers to refrain from taking matters into your own hands. And I know, fellas, as hard as that may be sometimes, and we want to retaliate. We want to get revenge, don't we? But God says, do not do that, God, instead we need to live with the confidence that God is able to act justly and will execute His justice in His time. We leave the judgment of all things, people, places, and events to Him, right? It is when we take matters in our own hands that we will suffer from our own sinful attitudes and actions. So we just need to take a deep breath, back away, and say, well, Just let it be. Well, I can't do that. That's not my business. That's not my job. God will take that, and we all know God will. At the end, these people are living like the world and doing and saying and going and all these things. They're going to have to give an account one day, right? We all know that. Every knee will bow, right? Every tongue will confess. So God will have the final say so in this, and we just have to use our godly wisdom to back away from that, not to get that revenge, you know. God's people enjoy the benefits of his blessings. The home of the righteous that will show the value of a relationship with God. They would be eager to do what's right, and they would be known for their goodness. Honesty, God's way above reproach. Second, God not only curses wicked people, he mocks them. And, you know, people make fun of him and, you know, talk about him and say hateful things and don't believe what he says and doesn't believe there is one in some cases. And it's people today, right? I mean, that's just the way they are. You know, he turns a deaf ear on those people. And, you know, they find themselves living out his curse on them because of their selfish lifestyles. They're all caught up in, right? Their pride will definitely result in their fall. Now, how many times have we mentioned that word? Pride cometh before a fall. Selfish, pride, those are things that you want to do it your way. You make fun of God. And we see that everywhere today, don't we, fellas? And that, you know, that's where we will respect the Lord and fear him and do things his way, because that is the alternative. Proverbs 9:12, it says, Solomon said, those who mock will bear the consequences. And they will. In God's time and in his way, they will. You know. But in contrast, it says God gives grace to the humble. Instead of turning a deaf ear, he takes care of the humble. You know, those who are poor, it says in Proverbs, they have been oppressed. He'll take care of them because they've been, you know, exploited and oppressed. But, you know, humble, get yourself out of the way. We've talked about those things many times, how those are God-like characteristics that will come out in the way we act, in the way we treat other people, and it means a lot. It's very important to the Lord. And we can stay there in that under those two, humble and selfless, you know, we can get in between those two and the way we act, you know, God will be very pleased. The humble in Proverbs, it does include those who are poor, like I mentioned, you know, but it could be any of us, you know. Just stay humble. It says finally, Solomon used the concept of honor. God's grace to the humble puts them on the path of honor. Those who embrace his wisdom will inherit a place of honor. And of course, that means you'll enjoy the blessings when you live with honor, with that reputation. You know, those things are important. This is all connected, you know. Living with honor. And we all, you know, God's blessings are just, it can be anything, as we all know. And we all can give testimony or examples of how God's blessed us along the way, be it whatever it might be. But, you know, honor, you know, suggests the contentment that comes from God's smile on us as we grow in our personal walk with him. That contentment, I see people around and have that glow in their face, is that confidence. I know you guys have seen that. These people are they just seem to be so content. They just have that godly glow in their face. What they say, the way they carry themselves, they're just so confident. Well, that's that honor, that contentment. You know, that's what God wants us to be. He wants us to be content wherever we are, whatever we have or whatever we don't have. God will sustain us. He'll take care of us. But on the other hand, fellas, it talks about foolish people. They cannot expect to, you know, to enjoy the promise of being honored. They would experience dishonor. The Lord will disgrace. These are strong words, aren't they, fellas? The Lord will disgrace them. That's the certain fate of fools who ignore him, like people today. and or the world today for the most part. In due time, they will pay the price of their foolish choices. That's sad, and that's pretty much point blank, but it's the truth. It's just the way it is. That's God's way, and we all have choices. But let's choose these ways. These ways will, at the end of the day, the road will be a lot smoother, and He's given us guidance, directions, boundaries, the way we should go, the way we should act and carry ourselves, because it's going to come out, isn't it? And what we say, and we've talked about this before. I hate to be repetitive, but I mean it is the truth. That the way we carry ourselves, what we say, how we act, where we go, and all of those involved, it'll come out. Godly wisdom will come out in the way what we, all of those things I just mentioned. So fellas, these are just good things to support us, encourage us, and just things that we need to do to be a light for the Lord in this lost and dying world. And we can do this, by just following these instructions. And it's really good and good information. And but let's just stay humble. Let's just, like we've mentioned before, keep your feet on the ground, stay humble. And if you stay humble, then pride won't be able to get in. And you'll get yourself out of the way, and you think about others and then how you treat others, and how even the ones that you don't get along with, And I just think those are great attributes, great characteristics, and it's just God's way. And so let's be encouraged by this, fellas. And again, it's been good to be with you, and I hope you guys have a great day and a great weekend. And maybe I'll see one of you guys in church tomorrow. But I hope you guys, again, have a great day. Take care of yourselves, and call me if you need me for anything. And I'll do the same, and hope to see you real soon. Take care, fellas. Bye for now.